I didn't cry at my husband's funeral. People noticed. I saw them watching me from across the rows of folding chairs, whispering behind their programs, probably wondering what kind of woman stands dry-eyed while they lower her husband of 41 years into the ground. The kind I wanted to tell them, who cried every night for 3 months before he died. The kind who had already done her grieving while he was still alive, still in the hospital bed they'd set up in the living room, still calling my name in the dark. I was 67 years old, and I had never once in my adult life been truly alone. Gerald and I had met at a church social in Knoxville when I was 24. He was tall and serious, and brought me a cup of sweet tea without being asked. We were married 11 months later. We raised 2 children in the same house where we bought our first couch together, a rust-colored thing that my daughter always hated. We paid off that house in 2003. Gerald retired from the County Roads Department in 2011. I had worked 22 years as a bookkeeper for a small manufacturing company before my knees started giving me trouble, and I retired too. We had savings, not rich, not even close, but enough. Gerald had a pension. I had my Social Security. We had the house, paid free and clear, worth somewhere around $280,000, according to the letter the county assessor sent every spring. We were fine. We had been fine for a long time. Then Gerald got sick, and then he got sicker, and then he was gone, and suddenly I was a woman alone in a 4-bedroom house in Knoxville, Tennessee, with a lawn that needed mowing and a furnace that made a sound I didn't recognize, and a daughter who called me every single day. Her name is Sylvia. She's 43, lives about 20 minutes away in a newer development with her husband Corey and their 2 boys. After Gerald died, she started coming over more. She'd bring dinner in those disposable aluminum pans and sit with me at the kitchen table while I ate, asking questions, refilling my water glass, tucking things into the refrigerator. It felt good. It felt like being mothered, which is a strange thing to say at 67, but grief makes you young again in the worst ways. "You don't have to do everything by yourself, Mum," she told me one evening, about 4 months after the funeral. She was washing my dishes without being asked. I was watching her back and thinking about how much she looked like Gerald around the shoulders. "That's what we're here for." I told her I was managing fine. She turned around and gave me the look, the one that meant she disagreed but was being patient about it. "Your gutters are full of leaves. The Henderson's kid is charging $40 to clean them, and you haven't called him." "I was going to, Mom." I didn't argue. I was tired. I had been tired since the funeral, and I didn't see it ending any time soon. I said she could call the Henderson boy if she wanted. That was the first small thing I handed over. Looking back, I can see the shape of it now, the way you can trace a river's course on a map, even when you're standing too close to the water to see where it's going. Each small thing led to the next. The gutters led to Sylvia taking over the yard service. The yard service led to her handling the utility accounts online because she said it was easier to manage from her phone. The utility accounts led to her suggesting she be added to my checking account, just so she could pay bills if I was ever in the hospital, just in case. That was the phrase she used a lot. Just in case. "You're not young, Mum. What if you had a fall? What if something happened and your power got shut off because no one could reach you?" She said it gently, sitting across from me at the same kitchen table, with the same concerned look she'd had since the day Gerald died. "I just want to make sure you're protected." I heard her. I heard the love in it. Or what I thought was love. I added her to the account in February. By April, Corey had started coming over too, sometimes without Sylvia. He'd fix things, little things, a dripping faucet, a loose hinge on the back door. He was handy. I'd always give him that. But there was something in the way he'd walk around the house that made me uncomfortable, the way his eyes would move across the rooms like he was measuring something. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself grief makes you paranoid. One evening in May, the two of them sat down with me after dinner and brought out a folder. Corey did most of the talking. He said they'd been thinking about my situation, really thinking about it, and they wanted to help me simplify things. The house was a lot to manage. The property taxes alone were over $3,000 a year. What if they helped me get a reverse mortgage, or better yet? And he said this part slowly, like he was laying down something fragile. What if I just moved in with them? We have the basement, Sylvia said quickly. We've already looked into finishing it. The boys would love having you there. You wouldn't be alone. I looked at the folder. It had printouts in it. Cost comparisons, something from a website about assisted living. I'm not going to assisted living, I said. I'm 67. No, of course not, Corey said. That's the point. You wouldn't have to. You'd be with family. And the house? I asked. They looked at each other in that way married people do, a whole conversation happening in half a second. We'd help you sell it, Sylvia said. The market is good right now. You'd walk away with a lot, Mum. You could put it into a joint account and we'd manage it together. For your expenses, for your care down the road. I sat there a moment. I kept my face still. Gerald used to say I had a good poker face, one of his few complaints about me during arguments. I told them I'd think about it. I did not sleep that night. I lay in the bed Gerald and I had shared for 38 years, and I stared at the ceiling. And I thought about the folder, about Corey's eyes moving around my rooms, about the phrase joint account, about the way Sylvia had said your care, like I was already somewhere past needing to make my own decisions. I was a bookkeeper for 22 years. I know how money moves. I know what it looks like when someone is drawing a line between you and your own resources. I didn't say anything the next morning, or the morning after that. I brought them casserole the following Sunday and played with my grandsons and smiled at everything Corey said. I was pleasant. I was a good mother-in-law and a good grandmother and a good woman. And on Monday morning, I called my own lawyer. Her name is Patricia, and I'd used her once before when Gerald and I updated our wills in 2019. She's around 50, no nonsense, short hair, keeps a box of tissues on her desk because she sees a lot of people in hard situations. I sat across from her and I told her everything. The account access, the folder, the house conversation, the joint account proposal. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands on her desk and said, "Have you looked at your bank statements recently?" I hadn't. Not closely. Not since I'd added Sylvia to the account. She turned her computer monitor toward me so I could see the secure banking portal on the screen after I logged in from her office. I looked at the transactions going back 3 months. There were withdrawals I didn't recognize. Small at first. $60 here, $120 there. Then larger. A charge to a home renovation company. A charge to what looked like a vacation booking site. My hands were steady on the desk. I had done my crying in advance of this moment too, I think. Some part of me had known and had been grieving it quietly for weeks. In 3 months, $11,000 had left my account. $11,000. Patricia printed the statements. She helped me file a report with my bank's fraud department that same day. She explained my options clearly. Since Sylvia had been legitimately added to the account, it was a complicated situation. Legally, the bank couldn't simply call it theft without more documentation. But I could remove her from the account immediately, which we did before I left the building. I could open a new account at a different bank, which I did the next morning. And I could update every financial document to ensure that no one, not Sylvia, not Corey, not anyone, had access to anything without my explicit written authorization going through Patricia's office. We also talked about the house. Patricia suggested I get an independent appraisal before anyone else could put numbers in my head, and I did. The house came in at $291,000. It was mine. Gerald and I had bought it together, and I had paid the last mortgage payment sitting at this very kitchen table in 2003, and it was mine. I did not tell Sylvia any of this. She called me 3 times that week. I answered every call. I asked about the boys' baseball games. I told her my hip had been bothering me a little. I said I was still thinking about the proposal, that I just needed more time. She was warm and patient and said there was no rush. They just wanted to make sure I was taken care of. I said I knew. In June, I had a long conversation with Patricia about restructuring my estate entirely. I updated my will. I set up a trust for my grandson's education, not through their parents, directly for them, controlled by a trustee at Patricia's firm until the boys turned 25. The house I left to my son, Warren, who lives in Cincinnati and has never once asked me for anything except my brisket recipe. Warren and I have always been quieter with each other than Sylvia and I. He calls on Sundays, asks about the weather in Knoxville, tells me about his garden. He never knew what was happening. I didn't tell him then either. July was hot. I planted tomatoes in the back garden, the first time I'd done that in years, because Gerald had always handled the vegetable beds. They weren't very good tomatoes, but I grew them and I ate them and they tasted exactly like mine. In August, Sylvia called with a new idea. She and Corey had gotten a quote for finishing the basement, $40,000. Wouldn't it make sense, she said, if I contributed to it, since I'd be living there? She said it like it was already decided. She said when you move in, not if. She said the boys were excited and had already picked which one would give up his room for sleepovers when Grandma was there. I let her talk. I let her lay out the whole plan. When she was finished, I said, "That sounds like a lot of thought went into it." "We just love you, Mum," she said. I said, "I know you do." And then I told her I had also been doing some thinking. I told her I had spoken with a financial advisor and a lawyer, and I had decided to stay in my house. I was going to hire a part-time housekeeper to come twice a week and a yard service, and I had already signed up for a medical alert program in case of emergency. I said I had reviewed my finances and everything was in good order. I said I was grateful for everything she'd done over the past year, but that I was going to be just fine on my own. There was a long silence. "What do you mean you spoke to a lawyer?" Her voice had changed. Something in it tightened. "Just to get my affairs organized," I said. "Patricia helped me update my will and set up a trust for the boys' education. Everything is handled." "A trust?" Another silence. "When did you do that, June?" I said. "You didn't tell me." "I didn't realize I needed to," I said pleasantly. She said she didn't understand. She said they had been planning, that Corey had already talked to a contractor, that she had thought we were on the same page. She said she was hurt that I had done all of this without including her. I said, "I'm sorry you feel that way." She cried a little. She said she had only ever wanted to help me. She said she didn't know why I was shutting her out. She used the words, "Family is supposed to take care of each other," which landed on me like a stone in still water. I said, "I agree completely, and I intend to take very good care of myself." She didn't come by for 3 weeks after that. When she did come, she brought the boys, and we had lemonade on the back porch, and I watched my grandsons throw a ball back and forth in the yard Gerald had mowed for 40 years. Corey stayed in the car. She was cool with me. Formal, almost. She didn't offer to wash any dishes. I found that I didn't mind. I found, actually, that my house felt different without the weight of being managed. I started sleeping better. I bought a new quilt for the bedroom, something I'd been wanting for 2 years, but had kept putting off the way you put off small pleasures when grief makes everything feel like a luxury you don't deserve. I had breakfast every morning at my own table, at whatever time I wanted, eggs the way I liked them, coffee strong enough that Gerald always complained, reading whatever I felt like reading. One Saturday morning in September, I drove over to the bank to handle something in person. I still prefer doing things in person when I can, always have. The teller I usually dealt with, a young woman named Brianna, who always remembered my name, asked if I was doing anything fun over the weekend. I said I was thinking about starting a garden journal. I'd grown up watching my own mother keep one, and I'd always meant to do the same. Brianna said that sounded lovely. I said I thought so too. On the way home, I stopped at the garden centre and bought a good blank journal, the kind with thick cream paper that holds ink without bleeding through. I sat down that evening and wrote the first entry, describing the tomatoes, how they'd come in late, how the soil on the south side of the bed seemed richer than I'd expected. I wrote about what I'd plant differently next year. I wrote about Gerald briefly, just one line, the way he used to stand at the back door in the evenings watching the light change over the yard. There is a particular freedom that comes to a woman when she finally stops waiting for someone else to decide what her life is worth. I am 67 years old. I own my house. I have enough. I have a good lawyer, a strong cup of coffee every morning, and a journal with thick cream pages. My son calls on Sundays. The grandsons still come for lemonade. And Sylvia, well, she's learning slowly that her mother was never the well she thought she was. I already capped it, long before she thought to look. There's a moment I keep coming back to, sitting in Patricia's office watching $11,000 scroll across a computer screen and feeling something I didn't expect. Not rage, not even heartbreak exactly, just a very quiet, very clear recognition, like finally putting a name to something that had been sitting in the corner of the room for months, pretending to be something else. I've thought a lot about what made it possible, not just what Sylvia and Corey did, but what made me a person who almost let it happen. I trusted too easily, yes, but more than that, I had confused love with surrender. I thought letting someone take things from my hands was the same as letting them in. It isn't. Real love doesn't need access to your bank account to prove itself. Sylvia didn't see herself as someone doing wrong. I believe that, even now. She had convinced herself that managing my money, selling my house, moving me into her basement, all of it was help. That's the part that took me longest to sit with. The fact that a person can cause real harm while genuinely believing they're being kind. But intentions don't change outcomes. The money was still gone. My sense of safety was still shaken. And if I'd waited another 6 months to look at those statements, the damage would have been so much worse. What saved me wasn't luck. It was something I had to choose, deliberately, in the middle of grief and loneliness, and the particular fog that comes after you lose someone you've spent 41 years standing next to. I had to decide to stay sharp, to keep asking questions, to not let the comfort of being cared for turn into the carelessness of being managed. That's harder than it sounds when you're tired and sad and your daughter is bringing you dinner in aluminum pans and telling you she loves you. Gerald used to say I was the one who kept the books straight in this family, and he didn't own me mean at work. He meant I paid attention. I noticed things. I asked where the money went, and I remembered the answer. I let grief soften me for a while. That was right and human, and I don't regret it. But I didn't let it make me foolish permanently. When something in me finally said, "Look closer," I listened. I think about my grandsons sometimes, the two of them throwing that ball back and forth in my yard on a summer afternoon. They'll grow up and make choices about how to treat people, especially people who are older or tired or alone. I hope what they carry from their grandmother is this: that dignity isn't something life takes from you automatically. You have to give it away, and you don't have to. I'm 67 years old. I have a paid-off house, a good lawyer, and tomatoes I grew myself that were honestly not very good. I have a journal with thick cream pages and a son who calls on Sundays and asks about the weather. It's enough. It has always been enough. I just had to be the one to decide that, not Sylvia, not Corey, not anyone standing in my kitchen with a folder full of printouts telling me what my life was worth. Me. Just me.